My name is Brooke Sullivan. I am 32 years old, and last Saturday my dad did not show up to walk me down the aisle. That might sound like a small thing to some people, but I had just spent 8 years of my life working overseas, sending money home so he would not lose everything to the banks. I was standing in the bridal suite of a small vineyard in Napa Valley, wearing a dress I had saved for since I was 25, holding a bouquet of white peonies my fiancé had picked because he knew they were my favorite. The music started. The coordinator knocked on the door and said it was time. My dad was supposed to be waiting at the end of the hallway. He was supposed to take my arm and walk me to the man I loved. He was supposed to be there. He was not. My phone buzzed on the vanity table. Not a call from my dad. Not a text saying he was running late or stuck in traffic, just an Instagram notification. At the top of my feed was a photo posted 20 minutes earlier. My dad and my younger brother at a casino in Reno, drinks in their hands, chips stacked in front of them, grinning like they had just hit the jackpot. The caption made my chest go tight. Boys' weekend, feeling lucky tonight. Something inside me went very, very still. 8 years of overtime shifts and missed holidays and sending money home so they would not lose the house suddenly looked different in my head. Like I had been reading the wrong story the whole time. Like I was a character who finally realized she was not the hero of this tale. She was the ATM. I scrolled through the comments. Fire emojis. Get that money, king. You deserve this, bro. Nobody in that post knew who had actually been paying for their lifestyle. Nobody knew the woman in the wedding dress 300 miles away was the reason they still had a roof over their heads. I handed my phone to my maid of honor without a word. She looked at the screen, then looked at me, her face cycling through confusion and then rage. Brooke, she whispered, what do you want to do? I took a breath. I thought about all the nights I had worked doubles in emergency rooms across 3 different countries. I thought about the apartment I never decorated because I was never there long enough. I thought about every birthday and Christmas I had missed because flights home were expensive and the money was better spent paying down his debt. Then I thought about the man waiting for me at the altar. The man who had never once asked me for anything except my time and my honesty. The man who deserved a bride who was not falling apart. I picked up my bouquet. I fixed my veil in the mirror. I walked myself down that aisle with my head high, and my heart cracked open in a way I did not let anyone see. After the ceremony, after the first dance, after the cake and the speeches and the photos, I excused myself and found a quiet corner of the vineyard. I pulled out my phone, called my bank's international line, and said 6 words I had been practicing in my head for hours. Cancel every card in his name. 15 minutes later, my dad finally called. His voice was shaking, confused, angry. He said the casino was accusing him of fraud. He said his cards were frozen. He said he was stranded in Reno with no way to pay for the hotel room he had already charged to an account I had been funding for nearly a decade. Brooke, you need to fix this, he said. Whatever you did, undo it. This is not funny. I took a breath and answered, calm and flat, the same voice I used when I told families their loved ones were not going to make it. This is happening because you earned it. You missed my wedding to go gambling. You do not get to use my money anymore. Then I hung up. If you have ever felt used by your own family, you will not want to miss how I finally turned the tables. Stay with me until the end to hear exactly how the payback played out. By the time I was standing in that vineyard watching my phone light up with panicked calls, I had already lived through a whole lifetime of being the responsible one. The fixer. The one who held everything together while everyone else got to fall apart. I grew up in Sacramento, California. Back then, my dad was different. He coached my softball team, showing up to every practice with a bag of oranges and a voice that could be heard across 3 fields. He helped me with math homework at the kitchen table, patient even when I got frustrated and wanted to quit. He worked as an electrician, coming home with calloused hands and stories about jobs that went wrong and jobs that went right. He would swing me around the living room and call me his little champion. My mom was a teacher who smelled like chalk dust and always had a book in her hand. She made pancakes on Sunday mornings and kept a garden in the backyard that she treated like her 5th child. My brother Tyler came along when I was 7, and for a while, we were the kind of family that other families envied. Matching Christmas sweaters, summer road trips to the beach, a refrigerator covered in school photos and report cards. We were not rich, but we were stable. That was the word my mom used whenever I asked why we could not have the things my friends had. We are stable, Brooke. That is more than a lot of people can say. For a while, that was true. It changed the way most bad things do. Slowly at first, then all at once. My mom got sick when I was 15. Ovarian cancer. The kind that does not announce itself until it is already everywhere, spreading silently while you are busy planning birthday parties and parent-teacher conferences. She fought for 2 years with surgeries and chemo and clinical trials that insurance barely covered. I remember sitting in hospital waiting rooms doing homework while my dad paced the hallways. I remember the way her hair fell out in clumps and how she tried to joke about it, saying she had always wanted to try a pixie cut. I remember the sound of her crying at night when she thought no one could hear. Hospital bills piled up like snowdrifts. My dad took out a second mortgage to cover the treatments insurance denied. Then a third. Then loans I did not know about until years later. Loans with interest rates that should have been illegal. When she died, the house felt like a tomb. My dad walked around like a ghost for months, barely eating, barely speaking, staring at her empty chair at the dinner table, like she might still walk through the door. He was not the same man who used to grill burgers on Sunday afternoons and dance with her in the kitchen when he thought no one was watching. That man had been buried alongside my mother. He started going to the casino about a year after the funeral. At first, it was just once a month with guys from work. A few hours at the poker table, a couple of beers, a story to tell on Monday. He said it helped him forget. He said it was the only place where his brain went quiet. The first time he called me from the floor, his voice was electric in a way I had not heard since before my mom got sick. Brooke, I turned $200 into $5,000 in one night. Can you believe that? Your mom would have loved this. I remember feeling this strange mix of hope and dread. Maybe this was the break he kept saying we needed. Maybe the universe was finally giving us something back. That was the last time it ever felt like luck. After that, the calls sounded different. He was always so close to winning big. He just needed a heck little more to make back what he lost. The mortgage got behind. Then the credit cards maxed out. Then the collection calls started, first to him, then to me. By the time I finished nursing school, I knew the exact amount of his debt, because I had spent hours on the phone with creditors, negotiating payment plans, begging for extensions. $1.5 million. When you added up the mortgages and the loans and the credit cards, and the money he had borrowed from people I had never met. I did what the oldest children in broken families always do. I said I will fix it. I took the first travel nursing contract I could find. Then the second. Then the third. I worked in ERs in Texas and urgent care clinics in Florida and intensive care units in Dubai, where the pay was double what I could make stateside. I lived in furnished apartments that never felt like home. I stopped buying things for myself. No vacations, no nice clothes, no nights out with friends who eventually stopped inviting me because I always said no. Every month I sent money home, sometimes half my paycheck, sometimes more. I told myself it was temporary, 2 years, maybe 3. Pay down the debt, stabilize things, come home to a family that was grateful, and finally safe. That was the plan. The plan lasted 8 years. The first year overseas was the hardest. I was working 14-hour shifts in an emergency room that never slowed down. Car accidents, heart attacks, overdoses, the full spectrum of human crisis. I learned how to function on caffeine and adrenaline, and the steady rhythm of monitors beeping. When my paycheck hit, I would transfer a huge chunk straight to my dad. Every time I did, he thanked me like I had just pulled him out of a burning building. He always promised it was almost over. After this loan was cleared or that credit card was paid off, he would be able to stand on his own 2 feet again. I wanted to believe him so badly that I ignored the parts that did not add up. The trips he kept mentioning. Weekends in Tahoe with my brother. A guy's trip to Vegas for someone's birthday. A new truck he said he got a great deal on but never explained how he afforded. The total debt never seemed to go down as fast as the money I was sending out. Whenever I asked why things were still so bad, my dad had an answer ready. There was always an unexpected repair on the house, a medical bill from something I had not heard about, some new fee from the bank. He made the debt sound like a living thing that kept growing no matter what he did. Meanwhile, my brother Tyler started posting more polished photos on Instagram. New sneakers, weekends in LA, a sports car he claimed belonged to a friend but kept appearing in his photos. He was 24 and had never held a job longer than 6 months, but somehow he was always at concerts and clubs and rooftop bars with city views. Every time I saw one of those posts, I told myself a story about how he was paying for it. Maybe he had a job I did not know about. Maybe his friends were covering him. Maybe influencers get stuff comped all the time. It was easier to believe that than to imagine my dad taking the money I bled for and pouring it right back into the same hole that had almost swallowed us. In the rare weeks when I was not drowning at the hospital, I would sit at my small kitchen table overseas and open a spreadsheet on my laptop. I listed out every transfer I had made, every promise my dad had given me, every rough number he had thrown at me for how much was left. On paper, we should have been close to the finish line. But the way he talked, it was like we had barely taken a step. Anytime I tried to press him for real documents, actual statements, proof of the balances, he got defensive. You do not trust me anymore after everything I have been through? I am your father. I would never lie to you about something like this. Your mother would be so disappointed in how suspicious you have become. The guilt hit me every single time. I would back off, close the spreadsheet, and tell myself to just keep my head down and keep working. That became my whole identity. Not Brooke the person, not Brooke the nurse with hobbies and dreams. Just Brooke the daughter paying for everyone else's mistakes. I did not realize it yet, but that was the first part of the damage. The money hurt. The sleepless nights hurt. But losing the sense that I was allowed to live a life of my own, that was the part that would take the longest to fix. The first real crack showed up about 3 years in. I had just finished a brutal shift. A young mother had coded in the ER, and despite everything we did, she did not make it. I sat in the break room afterwards staring at the wall, too tired to even cry. My phone buzzed. A text from my dad asking if I could send an extra $2,000 this month. Emergency plumbing, he said. Water damage in the basement. Insurance will not cover it. I opened my banking app out of habit. The transfer to my dad had gone through a few days earlier. But when I scrolled through the activity on the joint account we used for payments, something caught my eye. $800 at a steakhouse in Reno, $1,200 at a casino hotel, $500 cash withdrawal from an ATM inside a gambling floor. I stared at the screen, replaying our last phone call. He had cried about the bank being on his back. He had talked about possibly losing the house. He had never once mentioned a trip. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe the charges were old. Maybe Tyler had borrowed the card. Maybe the bank made a mistake. Maybe. The next day, during a rare, slow moment at the nurse's station, I brought it up with my friend Megan, another travel nurse who had been working the same contracts as me. She glanced at my phone, frowned, then asked the question I had been avoiding. Do you have actual statements for the debts you're paying off, or just what your dad tells you? The answer made me feel stupid as soon as I said it. Mostly what he tells me. I could hear how naive it sounded. Megan did not make me feel bad, which somehow made it worse. She just nodded slowly and said something that stuck with me. My cousin went through something like this with her mom. Turns out her mom had been gambling away the money for years and opening credit cards in my cousin's name to cover the losses. She did not find out until collectors started calling her at work. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Megan's words echoing in my head. I told myself my dad would never do something like that. He was careless, maybe. Bad with money, definitely. But he would not steal from his own daughter. Would he? The breaking point came 6 months before my wedding. I was finally back in the States, working at a hospital in San Francisco, planning a wedding with a man named Daniel, who had somehow seen past all my walls and loved what he found underneath. We were saving for a house. We were talking about kids, For the first time in years, I was building something that was mine. Then a letter arrived. It was addressed to me at my dad's house in Sacramento, forwarded by a neighbor who knew I had moved. Inside was a notice from a collections agency about a past due balance on a credit card I had never opened. The card was in my name. The billing address was my dad's house. The charges went back 3 years, all of them at casinos and hotels and cash advances from ATMs I had never touched. I called the number on the letter, my hands shaking. A woman in collections pulled up the account and started reading off details. My full name, my social security number, my dad's address. Charges totaling over $40,000. According to our records, this card was opened in person at a bank branch in Sacramento, she said. Do you recognize the co-applicant listed here? She read my dad's full name. I hung up without saying goodbye. For a full minute, I just stood there in my apartment, letter in one hand, phone in the other, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. I called my dad. He answered on the second ring, cheerful and oblivious. Hey, sweetheart, how is wedding planning going? I did not bother with small talk. Did you open a credit card in my name? The silence that followed said more than any words could have. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful, defensive, already building a wall. The bank said it was just paperwork. They told me we needed another line of credit to consolidate everything. I only did it because I was trying to protect the house. You were not here. I did not have any other options. I pictured him sitting in some bank office, nodding along while a loan officer slid paperwork across the table, thinking if he just signed my name, the whole mess would go away. Dad, that is not just paperwork, I said, my voice cracking. That is my credit, that is my future. If I want to buy a house with Daniel, they are going to see this. You did not even ask me. He started to cry, right on cue. I was desperate, Brooke. You do not understand how scary it is when collectors show up at your door. I did what I had to do for this family. That phrase, for this family. It had become a shield he hid behind whenever I got too close to the truth. I am part of this family, I said. You keep saying you did it for us, but all I see is you making choices that wreck my future, so you do not have to face your own mistakes. He went quiet. Then he turned mean. If you had been here, I would not have had to. He snapped. You ran off to chase money overseas, and left me to deal with everything alone. Now you want to judge me? Your mother would be ashamed of you. That was the line that broke something inside me. My mother. The woman who had worked 2 jobs to keep us fed. The woman who had died with hospital bills stacked on her nightstand. He was using her memory as a weapon against me. I ended the call before he could say anything else. The weeks leading up to my wedding were supposed to be the happiest of my life. Instead, they were a blur of conference calls with fraud specialists and credit bureaus and a lawyer named Patricia who specialized in financial crimes. Patricia walked me through everything in that calm, clinical way that lawyers have when they are delivering bad news. Based on what you are telling me, your father committed identity theft and fraud. He opened accounts in your name without your consent and used them for his own benefit. That is a felony. I sat in her office, Daniel holding my hand, feeling like I was watching my own life from the outside. What are my options? I asked. You can file a police report. You can dispute the fraudulent accounts with the credit bureaus. You can pursue civil action to recover what was stolen. Or you can do nothing and accept that these debts will follow you until they are paid off or discharged. I thought about my dad, about the man who taught me to ride a bike, about the way he cried at my mom's funeral, about the 8 years I had spent trying to save him from himself. Then I thought about Daniel, about the house we wanted to buy, about the children we wanted to have, about the life I deserved that was being stolen from me one forged signature at a time. File everything, I said. I want this on record. The process took months. I placed fraud alerts on my credit. I filed disputes with every bureau. I gave statements to investigators who asked questions that made my stomach turn. Did your father have access to your social security number? Did you ever give him permission to open accounts in your name? Were you aware of his gambling habits? Yes. No. Yes. Through it all, my dad kept calling. His voicemail swung between rage and self-pity. He accused me of betraying him, He reminded me of everything he had sacrificed as a father. He told me I was destroying our family over money. I saved every message. Patricia said they might be useful later. My brother Tyler sent texts asking why I was being so dramatic. He said Dad was just trying to keep things together. He said I was overreacting, that this was just how families helped each other. I typed back one line: "Helping is not the same as stealing." He did not reply. The wedding was supposed to be a fresh start. A line drawn between the old Brooke who let herself be used and the new Brooke who was finally building something of her own. Daniel and I had planned everything carefully. A small ceremony at a vineyard in Napa. Just close friends and family. My dad was supposed to walk me down the aisle. Despite everything, despite the fraud and the lies, I had decided to give him one more chance. Patricia thought I was crazy. Megan said I was too forgiving. Daniel just held my hand and said he would support whatever I decided. I called my dad 3 weeks before the wedding. I told him I wanted him there. I told him this was his chance to show me he could put family first for once. He cried. He promised. He swore on my mother's grave that he would be there. I would never miss my little girl's wedding, he said. You are everything to me, Brooke. I know I have made mistakes, but I love you more than anything. I wanted to believe him. I chose to believe him. That was my mistake. The morning of the wedding, I woke up with butterflies in my stomach and hope in my chest. The vineyard was beautiful in the early light. Rows of grapes stretching toward the hills, the ceremony space decorated with white flowers and soft fabric that caught the breeze. My dress was hanging in the closet, a simple A-line gown that had made me cry when I first tried it on. My hair and makeup were scheduled for noon. My dad had texted the night before saying he could not wait to see me. I am going to be the proudest father in that vineyard tomorrow, he had written. Your mom would be so happy. I read that text probably 50 times, letting myself believe it. By 2 p.m., my hair was done in soft waves, my makeup was perfect, and my dad had not arrived. I told myself he was probably stuck in traffic. I told myself he was nervous and taking his time. I told myself any of the 1,000 excuses I had made for him over the years. By 3 p.m., the ceremony was supposed to start, and his phone was going straight to voicemail. The wedding coordinator kept asking if we should delay. The guests were getting restless. Daniel sent a text asking if everything was okay. By 3:15 p.m., I was standing in the bridal suite with my phone in my hand, staring at an Instagram post of my dad and my brother at a casino in Reno, posted 20 minutes earlier. Boys' weekend, feeling lucky tonight. He had chosen a slot machine over his daughter's wedding. He had looked at his calendar, seen the date circled with hearts and flowers, and decided that gambling was more important than watching me marry the love of my life. I do not remember making the decision to walk myself down the aisle. I just remember handing my phone to Megan, watching her face shift from confusion to fury, and knowing that I had two choices. I could fall apart, or I could marry the man I loved and deal with the fallout later. I chose Daniel. I walked down that aisle alone, my head high, my heart breaking with every step. The guests murmured. Some of them probably thought it was a modern feminist statement. Only Megan knew the truth. Daniel's eyes were wet when I reached him. He took my hands and whispered, "I am so sorry, Brooke. I am so proud of you." We got married. We danced. We cut the cake. We smiled for photos that would live on mantles and in albums for decades. And then, when the reception was winding down and the guests were saying their goodbyes, I found a quiet corner and made the call that changed everything. Cancel every card in his name. Freeze every account connected to my social security number. I want a full fraud investigation opened today. The woman on the other end of the line asked me to verify my information. I gave her everything. My name, my social, my dad's name, the accounts he had opened, the years of transfers I had made to an address that was no longer my home. "Ma'am," she said carefully, "are you aware that this will affect the primary account holder's access to these funds?" "Yes," I said. "That is the point." 15 minutes later, my dad called. "Brooke, what did you do?" His voice was panicked, angry, scared. "The casino says there's a fraud alert on my accounts. They froze everything. I cannot pay for the hotel. They are talking about calling the police." I listened to him spiral for about 30 seconds, then I spoke. You missed my wedding to go gambling. You stole my identity. You lied to me for 8 years. You do not get to use my money anymore. Brooke, please. I can explain. I just needed one more night. I was so close to winning it all back. I was going to surprise you with. I do not care, I said. I am done. I hung up and blocked his number. Then I went back to my reception, found my husband, and danced one more song with him under the string lights while my phone buzzed with calls I would never answer. The fallout took months to fully unfold. The fraud investigation revealed that my dad had opened 4 separate accounts in my name over the past 5 years. Credit cards, a personal loan, a line of credit. Total debt in my name that I had never agreed to, $127,000. The investigators also discovered that the money I had been sending home for 8 years had not been going toward the original debt. Most of it had been gambled away within weeks of arriving. The mortgage I thought I was saving? Foreclosed 2 years earlier. The house I thought my dad was living in? Sold. He had been renting a condo and telling me the payments were keeping the family home safe. Every story he had told me was a lie, built on top of another lie. Patricia helped me file a police report. The district attorney's office reviewed the evidence and decided to press charges. Felony identity theft. Fraud. My dad was arrested 3 months after my wedding. My brother Tyler called me when it happened, furious and crying. How could you do this to him? He is your father. He is going to jail because of you. I let him yell for about a minute. Then I said the thing I had been holding back for years. He is going to jail because of what he did. I did not forge his name on anything. I did not steal his identity. I did not lie to him for a decade. He did all of that to me, and you knew. You knew and you said nothing because you were benefiting from it too. Tyler went quiet. I saw the trips, I continued. I saw the car. I saw the casino posts. You were spending money that I earned while I was working 14-hour shifts in emergency rooms. You were partying on my credit while I was holding dying people's hands. Do not call me again until you are ready to take responsibility for your part in this. I hung up. He has not called since. My dad took a plea deal, 2 years probation, mandatory gambling addiction counseling, and restitution payments that will follow him for the rest of his life. No prison time, but a felony on his record that will make it nearly impossible for him to get a decent job or rent an apartment without explaining what he did. The fraudulent accounts were removed from my credit report after months of disputes and documentation. My score is still recovering, but Patricia says it should be back to normal within a year or 2. Daniel and I bought a house 6 months after the wedding. A small place with a garden and a room that might be a nursery someday. We painted the walls ourselves and hung photos of our wedding, including one of me walking down the aisle alone that I used to hate but now keep on my nightstand. It reminds me of what I survived. My dad has tried to contact me a few times. Letters from the address of whatever room he is renting now. Voicemails left from numbers I do not recognize. They all say the same thing. He is sorry, he was sick. He did not mean to hurt me. He hopes I can forgive him someday. I have not responded. Not because I am cruel, not because I do not believe addiction is real, but because every time I start to soften, I remember the Instagram post, the casino, the slot machine, the caption that said feeling lucky on the day he was supposed to walk me down the aisle. He made his choice. Now I am making mine. People ask me sometimes if I regret turning him in. If I wish I had just let it go, kept the peace, accepted the loss, and moved on. When they ask me that, I think about my mom. I think about the woman who worked herself to exhaustion trying to keep our family stable. I think about what she would say if she knew what he had done with her memory. How he had used her name to manipulate me, how he had let the life she built crumble, while he chased a jackpot that was never coming. She would not have wanted me to sacrifice myself for someone who refused to get help. She would have wanted me to build a life worth living. That is what I am doing now. I started seeing a therapist about 6 months after the wedding. Her name is Dr. Reyes, and she has this way of asking questions that makes you realize you have been lying to yourself for years. We talk about codependency, about the way children of addicts learn to take responsibility for things that were never their fault. We talk about guilt and boundaries, and the difference between helping someone and enabling them. You were parentified, she told me once. From the moment your mother got sick, you became the responsible adult in that family. You were 15 years old, and you were already carrying the weight of everyone else's survival. That is not normal, Brooke. That is trauma. I cried in her office that day. Not the quiet, controlled crying I had perfected over the years. The ugly, gasping kind that leaves you with a headache and swollen eyes. It felt like relief. I still work as a nurse, but I am not running away anymore. I work at a hospital 20 minutes from my house. I come home to Daniel every night. I have hobbies again. I read books. I garden just like my mom used to. Growing tomatoes and herbs in raised beds Daniel built for me. I take long walks where I do not check my phone every 5 minutes to see if someone is in crisis. The money I earn now goes into our savings account, our retirement fund, our future. Not into a black hole that someone else dug and expected me to fill. If you are listening to this, and some part of it feels uncomfortably familiar, I want you to hear this clearly. When someone in your family constantly asks for money, lies about why they need it, hides the real numbers, or makes you feel guilty for even asking questions, that is not normal. When you feel sick opening your banking app, when you are scared to bring up your own needs because you know they will say theirs are more important, that is not love. That is control. When someone uses your identity, your credit, your future without your permission, and then tells you it was for the family, that is not sacrifice. That is theft. I do not care if they're a parent, a sibling, a partner, or anyone else. The title does not erase the behavior. Setting boundaries with my dad did not make me a bad daughter. It made me a responsible adult. For years, I thought being good meant never letting him hit rock bottom. The truth is, my constant rescuing was exactly what kept him from ever facing his addiction. He did not have to get help because he could call me. He did not have to stop gambling because he knew I would cover the losses. He did not have to change because I was there in the background, filling the hole he kept digging. When I finally stepped back, everything I had been holding up crashed. It was messy. It was ugly. It hurt people, including me. But it also forced everyone involved to stop pretending. The real revenge was not the phone call from the vineyard. It was not watching my dad get arrested or seeing the fraud alerts destroy his weekend in Reno. The real revenge is the life I am living now. It is waking up next to someone who loves me without conditions. It is opening my banking app and seeing money that belongs to me. It is walking through my own house with my own furniture, knowing that every bill with my name on it is one I chose. The real revenge is being happy. If you have been taken for granted by your own family, I am not here to tell you to burn every bridge. I am here to tell you that you are allowed to walk off the bridge they keep building on your back. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to protect your credit, your savings, your future. You are allowed to stop being the emergency fund for people who never have emergencies, just bad choices they expect you to pay for. That is not cruelty, that is survival. One of the most important things I learned through all of this is that you cannot save someone who does not want to be saved. I spent 8 years trying to rescue my dad from his addiction. I sent money, I made excuses. I forgave things that should not have been forgiven. And every time I did, I taught him that there were no consequences. I taught him that someone would always be there to clean up the mess. When I finally stopped, when I let him face the reality he had created, it was the first time he had ever had to confront what he had become. I do not know if it will be enough to change him. That is not my responsibility anymore. What I do know is that I cannot set myself on fire to keep someone else warm. I cannot sacrifice my future for someone who treats it like a casino chip to be gambled away. If you are in a situation like mine, please hear this. You are not obligated to destroy yourself for people who refuse to get help. You are not a bad son or daughter or sibling or partner for protecting yourself. You are allowed to love someone and still walk away. Those two things can exist in the same heart. And despite everything, I can tell you this with a straight face. That feeling of finally choosing yourself, it is worth everything you will lose to get there. I walked myself down the aisle on my wedding day because my father chose a casino over his daughter. Now I am walking into a future he will never be part of. And I have never felt more free.